Welcome to this week's masterclass where we're going to have Jenny Smith who's in the house teaching how to get buyers off the fence. Who would like that? I think in this market where we've had to deal with interest rates up and down, it's a crazy thing to do. So I'm excited to hear from Jenny. Jenny's been in the business for 11 years. She's in Georgia. Jenny, without further ado, let's go ahead and have you take over.
All right. So, buyers, how many of you have buyers that are sitting on the fence like today? Anybody? Yes, Christina, Ryan, yes. So, to me, the biggest thing we have to do first is wrap our heads around why are they sitting on the fence? Because I think for a lot of times, us in real estate, we think they shouldn't be sitting on the fence because we understand the market and the dynamics in ways that the average consumer can't. So if we kind of step back and say, well, why are they on the fence? To me, there's three main reasons. So the first reason is uncertainty about the market. They just worry about, are they buying at the right time? And we all know that the right time to buy real estate is when?
Now,
Anytime, whenever you like, every time is really the right time. But for them, they're thinking, should I wait for prices to drop? Should I wait for the interest rates? And when they get confused, what does a mind that's confused automatically say every single time? No, they just get paralyzed. So that's one, uncertainty about the market. The second one is financial concerns. We know that for buying houses right now, the price of houses are high, interest rates are high, and they just worry about the long term, can they afford a house? Now, one of the things that a lot of them are concerned with is, well, if I'm renting something and it tears up, the landlord pays for it. But if I own a house and it tears up, who pays for it? Well, they do. So in their mind, I think sometimes they're inflating the likelihood of something going wrong and the cost of that. So like sometimes you can talk to them and try to understand, well, what are you afraid that might tear up, like a roof or something like that, and alleviate those fears or put them in context. Because if you live in a house, you would be able to say, well, like I've lived in my current house for 5 years and thus far, nothing has gone wrong. Doesn't mean it couldn't, but it doesn't mean it's going wrong every other week. Does that make sense? Now, we've got the chat up. So like if you have questions or I confuse anybody, just feel free to stick a question in there and I'm happy to answer it. But I think the third reason buyers sit on the fence is probably the most common. They want the perfect home. How many of you showed people houses and it's just not exactly what they're wanting? And they're like, well, we want the perfect house. Anybody got those kind of peoples? Yeah. And we can't do it for most of them because their reality of their income is not always going to match the current market. Plus, a lot of our people are living with their parents or just came out of their parents, and they feel like their first house should be like mom and dad's house, who's in their 50s and 60s. And that's just not going to happen. So how can we get them to look at all three of these and get them off the fence? For me, I think, first of all, you've got to identify which of these three are holding them on the fence. Because if it's all about finding the perfect home, then you handle that differently than if it's the financial concerns. Now, the secret sauce to me, it boils down to combining emotional intelligence with market savvy, leveraging your technology and your service. So when I'm talking about emotional intelligence, we've got to connect with these buyers on an emotional level on the fence beside them. So it's almost like you climb up on the fence and you sit there beside them until you understand why they're not jumping off the fence. So once you know why they're not on the fence, then that's where your market savviness comes in. Because once you can identify its market uncertainties or financial or finding that perfect home, once you can figure out which of the three it is, then you can address it. But if all you're doing is standing behind them, telling them to jump, they won't do it. They won't get off the fence. Um, you can use technology to simplify the process, because with technology, and when I'm talking about technology, a lot of what I'm talking about is all the tools that all of us have at our disposal that we keep locked up in our head, like market information. A lot of times we just want to tell people, like, this is a great time to buy a house because of X, Y, and Z. But with a younger generation, a lot of times you have to not only tell them, but show them. Because most of our 20 to 30-year-old buyers, maybe up to about 35, when they were living at home with mom and dad and they went through the great housing crisis, huge swaths of them were affected either in their own households or in their friends' households, and they're scarred. Does that make sense? So if you use tech to not just tell them, but to show them. So like my own daughter is looking at a house and she's looking at an area down towards Atlanta. And she's like, Mom, one of the things I'm really concerned about is I want to see the historic over the last 5 years, how much houses have appreciated in that little community that she's looking at. And she's like, so I'm going to make a spreadsheet, and she was going to do all this work. And I was like, baby, we actually, in our system, there's like a button we push and it does it for you, you know? And she's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not for sure which button because I haven't used it in a long time, but I'll go in and find the button. Because if you use it like where we're at, there's a button that says stats, and you give it some data and it's going to give you the right stats. So that's what I'm talking about using tech. Top-notch service. So sitting on the fence with them until you understand what they're thinking is part of that, because we can show people house after house after house, but until we understand what's holding them back, we can't address it. Um, I I want to take just a minute and see, surely as fast as I'm talking, somebody has a question.
I think it's more of a comment that I have to make in having gone through the lovely 2006, 7, 8 market. There's a lot of people that have major scars about how high values are and affordability.
Right.
And then, like even myself, I think, holy crap, just even when I see homes for sale today selling for
Yeah.
900,000, and when I look at their history and it's sold for like half of what it's selling for now 3 years ago, it just
Right.
makes me so upset.
Yes.
It gets me so frustrated. And so, when I think of it that way as a buyer myself, I'm like, dang it, I want prices to come back down and I want to wait for that. But there's no, data to prove that that's going to happen. And
Mm-mm.
so, and in 5 years from now, I'm going to sit back, just, literally same thing happened with Bitcoin. Bitcoin went up and went down. And when it went down, I was like, oh, well, I should buy it now. But of course I didn't. And then now it's back up to freaking 60 whatever thousand. I'm
Yeah.
like, dang it, why didn't I freaking buy it? But like, guess what? Bitcoin today is 60 whatever thousand. In 5 years from now, it could be worth, 150,000.
Yeah.
And so right now at the 60,000 is still gonna be a great deal. So like, it's hard for us to be able to think about the future. But when we look at the past, we're like, yep, 10 years
Mhm.
ago, values were, way lower than is today. And 20 years ago, most certainly, 30 years ago, most certainly as well. So if you look in the future, it's hard to imagine the house that you're looking at today that's worth 500,000 be worth anything more than that. But guess what? Inevitably is going to be, just because that's how inflation works. So
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, it's also how cities work and counties. They typically just keep growing, especially if you are in an area that's bringing in jobs and stuff. And I do think, like he said, once you can see it from their perspective, did y'all hear that great example he used of Bitcoin? So he walked away from housing to give them another example that they have no emotional tie to, more than likely, and they're able to see it reasonable versus the heart of buying a house. So don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to be like, if it's all about uncertainty, like, is the house going to go up? How can I show them a different way? I use gas a lot. I mean, because when I got my driver's license, gas was like 79 cents. I know some of y'all young people are like, oh my gosh, that woman is old. But it's never going to come back to 79 cents, nor have I ever stopped driving. Like if it goes up to $5 an hour, I mean, $5 a gallon, we're still going to drive. We might not drive as much. We might not do something, but we will keep driving. It's just life. I do want to talk, and yes, Christina, you are so right. If you can start getting used to showing them, if it's data or even one of the other things that we talked about, that will set you apart from the other agents working with buyers. And in this new world we're navigating, where buyers' commissions are changing, showing value is the number one thing that we're going to have to do. And opening a door does not show value. Um, it's what you do when you walk through that door. So that's our next thing we're going to talk about. How to get people off the fence is a lot of it's going to come when you're actually showing the houses and doing walkthroughs. So because you've sat on the fence with them and you understand more about them, then when you're showing them houses, you can really personalize that experience. So one of the things you want to go into it when you're showing somebody a house and you know they're on the fence, you should know off the top of your head what the two most important features in a home is for them. Because it's different for every buyer. Like, believe it or not, I know I'm in the South and Southern ladies are rumored to be great cooks. I can't cook anything. I mean, it just isn't happening in my house. So the kitchen is the least important space to me because I'm never there unless I'm using the microwave or the coffee machine, right? So if I'm working with somebody and they spend too much time in the kitchen, they lose me because they don't know me. Does that make sense? So you want to make sure when you're showing those houses that the things that matter to them, that's where you stop and you have some more conversation because they're surrounded by what is most important to them. So like if I'm having a conversation with someone in the kitchen and it's all about we're talking about what works for this house or just whatever we're talking in the kitchen, that's not where I'm going to fall in love with the house because I don't like the kitchen. But if you did that in the home office where I spend a lot of time and it had a beautiful view and lots of natural light, that would get my attention because that is one of the things I'm looking for. And that's kind of where I'm most interested in buying a house. So make sure you know what is it that they care about and kind of go there. So personalize the experience, highlight the potentials. So we all show houses and the people have them decorated and arranged in some of the most awful ways. Or is it just in my neck of the woods? Y'all got that where you're at? Yes. So sometimes you have to help them imagine what this house could be like. And sometimes it's even a little bit more work on you because what if you use some AI technology? Because remember, we're talking about using technology to be savvy and simplify. And if it was a vacant house, you went in with some of the photos and put some furniture in there of what it could look like. You think that would help somebody who can't visualize? Because some of you are great visualizers. Is that a word? I probably killed that. But and then some of us aren't. Like when I walk into vacant houses, I don't picture my furniture there. I just see blank walls. But what if you did that for them? Do you know how much that would cost you per month? You can do like 25 photos for $35 a month from the system we use. But you think that would catch a buyer's eye? If they were like, oh, I really like this house, but I can't imagine what it would look like, you can help them do that. And sometimes it's just as easy as saying, hey, this space would actually be a great home office or gym, but you could go a step further and really help them on some of the houses. What if you took some of the photos and got rid of all the people's junk so that they could actually see? You know, you can do that with AI too. But what does that cost us? Time and effort. And that is what we don't like to do. We would rather show 100 houses than sit down and do some work on the front side. Now, maybe I'm not talking to y'all, maybe I'm just talking to myself, but you know, that's the way it goes sometimes. We want to create a sense of urgency without pressuring them. So you want to be really careful when you say these words. I don't think this house is going to be here very long. If you say that on more than 2 or 3 houses, they will no longer believe you. Like you got to make sure if you say it, it really happens. Otherwise, you kill your credibility. And then you want to focus on an emotional connection. Learn some questions you can ask that fit who they are. Like, can you see yourself hosting Thanksgiving dinner in this house? Remember, I don't like to cook, so I like to host potlucks where everybody comes over. So a big dining room is also important. Big dining room, big living room for me. So come up with some questions that help them imagine their life in that house. Now, I'm trying to pause a little bit because I do want, if y'all have questions, to blurt them out. So any questions on that part? Are y'all learning anything, or am I just saying the same thing? Because I tried to make sure, you know, because y'all are like the best of the best showing up on these calls and learning.
Jenny, I think it's important when we're talking about, specific things to be very specific. Like when you say, I don't think that someone's going to stay on the market for very long. When I hear that, there's really no point to even you saying that statement because it's just a thought. But if
Mm-hmm,
you come from a place of certainty
mm-hmm.
by saying this home will not be here on the market next week,
Yes,
this home is going to sell by next week, it has a lot more weight to it than saying you think that it won't be available or that it may not be.
that's
I
a
literally was
great
showing
point.
properties yesterday to a client of mine, and the properties that they saw, they're like, oh, let me think about it. Well, guess what? Today they're both gone. The homes that
Yeah,
I showed them yesterday are no longer available for sale. And obviously, it gets very frustrating for us as agents showing those properties, but it also makes it to where now I know I can speak a little bit more confidently by saying, hey, do you remember the home that I showed you yesterday? It's no longer available.
right.
And so what that does in them is it says, oh my gosh, I was kind of wanting to make an offer on that. And when it gets taken away from them, then it makes them more motivated.
Mm-hmm.
A while back, not a while back, when I was first married, my wife and I went on a cruise and we saw this painting at an art auction, which I'd never ever been to in my life. And I
Phone
think art
caller.
auctions, oh, art auctions on a cruise are probably scam. But anyway, I was there and I saw this piece of art and I really, really wanted it. And I bid on it. And I was so scared. But guess what? Someone else outbid me and I lost out. But then the next piece of art that came on, I hadn't even seen it before. But because I had lost on the first one, I immediately like made an offer on it. I ended up being the only bidder. So I won and my wife was pissed. But the point is that when we miss out on something, it gets people more motivated to be like, oh, shoot, I better jump on this next opportunity before it hits. And sometimes buyers just need that experience of losing out on a house so that
Mm-hmm.
they get a little more motivated. But for us, we don't need to do that. We don't need to have that experience again to be able to know that that will happen. If we see a home that comes on the market and we know it's going to sell quickly, it is absolutely our responsibility to be able to be very confident in saying this home is going to sell by tomorrow.
Yes.
You don't make an offer on it, it's going to sell. And any stats, like when you tell, even, you're talking about younger people, when you're talking to younger people or you're talking to anyone, frankly, and if you just say vague comments, vague statistics, it falls on deaf ears. No
Mm-hmm.
one cares about vague comments or vague statistics. If you say last month, 47 homes sold in this pocket, The average price was this, the average list price was this. If you come from like just hard facts and data, they can't refute that. They can't say, oh, well, I don't know if I believe that or not. It's data, it's
Right.
there. And I think that's what comes, a lot of agents, we have this issue with not being 100% confident in what we're saying because we don't do the legwork, like you're saying up front, to know the data. When you
Yeah.
show a freaking house, how often do we go to that home in advance and preview the property before we show the client? How many times have I had this experience where I'm with my agent showing homes and you walk into a door and you open that door and you have no freaking idea what is on the other side of that door. And so this is how you do it. And you're like, and behind here is, oh, it's a closet. It's a closet. We don't have to look at it. Like you sound like an idiot, right? But if
Well,
you preview that freaking property, you can be like, and behind this door is a bathroom. Behind this door is yada yada, right? You just sound more confident if you just do a little bit of freaking prep work in advance. So
well, it, I'll never forget one of the first houses I ever showed, and I was not doing what he said. Where I get there like 5 or 10 minutes early, we're not talking about an hour early, like 10 minutes will usually get you in the house and you'll run through it. So my clients were with me, and we went down to the basement and we flipped on the lights. So they were behind me. I flipped on the lights, and there were probably 100 snake cages. I screamed and ran back up the stairs and almost nailed them. Like it was just like chaos. And it was simply because in the listing description, it did not say snakes in the basement. But yeah, so good. Yes. So let's talk a little bit to new agents, because you might be thinking, well, that's great, Jenny. You've been selling houses for 10 years. And how long have you been selling houses?
I don't know, 18.
Yeah. So I've only been selling houses like a year. How would I know? Well, what you could do, especially if it's in a subdivision, is pull everything that is sold in the last 90 days and look at how many days it's on market. So then when you're showing a house in that subdivision, you could be like, okay, so Brian, I pulled the data on this neighborhood, and on average, the houses have been going under contract within 2 days, 3 days, whatever, or 100 days. So we've got to make some decisions while we're here, or we've got some breathing room. If it's usually 100 days, then give them the breathing room. Like don't create urgency that's not there, because there are some neighborhoods that you'll run into that, but you can find some data that so that you can say it with confidence. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about video, because if you don't know me, and most of you probably don't, I'm really big into videos and our team puts out a lot of videos. So it's me as the team leader doing videos, and then all the agents on our team do. And I think that can be a way where you can have hard conversations with people and it not be face to face. So you can do videos where you're educating them on the process, but you're talking to everyone so they can sit back without it feeling like, oh, she's saying this just to me. Then what we do with our videos is we create playlists. So like if you're a buyer working with us, we're going to send you videos every week, and they just go out in a drip, and they're the topics that we want to make sure you know about: multiple offers, home inspections, why you can't ask for everything in the home inspection report to be done. But if you can educate your buyers while you're going through the process, you come out looking like the expert. That builds trust, and that helps them get off the fence. Another one is sometimes we have buyers that are on the fence, so much so they won't even go look at houses. Anybody got any of those? Like you talk to them, but they just won't go look at any houses with you. Well, what if you went and did a video tour with them? Because for some of them, just the act of going and looking at houses is too much. So even if they won't do the video tour with you at the same time, what if I said, hey, Emily, I went to this house over at 123 Banana Street. I really think it's what you've been describing to me. So I did a video tour, and I'm going to tell you exactly the same things I would if you were walking with me. You want me to shoot that over to you? What do you think Emily's going to say? Of course, because she's curious. And you're going to inject whatever your personality is to it. You're not just going to film it like, here's the bedroom, here's the kitchen. Like that doesn't move anybody. You're going to be like, Emily, you told me that the most important thing to you is the backyard. Look at this backyard, Emily. The kids can run around, the dog can run around, whatever it may be. But that sometimes will get them out looking at you because they start to trust you. Now, our time is up.
Jenny, real quick, one tool that I use a lot is Marco Polo. And the reason I like Marco Polo, aside from connecting with friends, is that when I have somebody that also gets Marco Polo, I can do a 15-minute long video via Marco Polo, and it's cloud-based, so it doesn't bog up my camera on my phone, my storage on my phone, and it makes it to where they can listen to it and watch it at their convenience, and they could speed it up if they want to, or they can listen to the whole thing and watch the whole thing. And because if you're saying if they can't do FaceTime, right? If they don't have an iPhone or whatever be maybe, or if you try to send them a video as a link, it just gets clunky. So just as an option, if you guys want to download Marco Polo and get your clients to, it's just an easy way to be able to share long form videos with them that you can do. So it's perfect for tours. So
yeah, that one is good. We also go old school sometimes and use YouTube, but we make them private. So nobody but who we send the link can, because sometimes we'll do it a little less personalized and be able to send it to a couple of people, but lots of tips there. All right, so we are almost out of time. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask about buyers, getting them off the fence?
I would love to do some objection handlers. So if I'm talking to somebody and they're on the fence because of the rates, what is how do you handle that?
Yeah, so it depends on their situation. So let's say they are renters. That one's a little bit easier because you can talk to them about, well, yes, rates are high right now. I usually will always agree that rates are high because we can't really say that 6.97 is low when 2 years ago they were in the twos. Like we just want to acknowledge, yeah, they're higher than they used to be. However, if you're renting something, your interest rate you're paying is 100%. So all of a sudden they go, well, that doesn't make sense. And when you buy, did you know, Brian, you have the option to refinance it and go down to the lower interest rate as long as you still qualify, but it's usually easier to qualify for a refi than it is on the initial side. And usually that'll help. Now, the hard one is when they're already in a house and they have that 2.75% interest rate, and you're trying to get them to give it up and go. So in a case like that, it's all about why are they moving? So poor Emily, you're right here in front of me. That's why I keep using your and Brian's names. But so like if I was talking to Emily, I'd be like, Emily, I understand that the interest rate is significantly higher than what you have, but you're frustrated and you don't like your house anymore. Do you want to keep coming home to that? Because when you got that 2.75, you didn't plan on being in this house forever, and you can always refinance if they come back down. So a lot of times if you can tap into, and I would really, if I was really working with Emily, dig into why are they moving? There has to be something driving them. Maybe they're having a kid, maybe they're not, something like that, that makes it worth it. And you've got to keep pounding at that reason in the right way so that it becomes the forefront, not the payment. Does that help some?
Jen, I think you hit the nail on the head. It is absolutely important for us to realize that we cannot force anybody to make a move unless they want to. If it doesn't make financial sense for someone to make a move, they're not going to make that move, right? It'd be negligent for us to be able to force them or try to talk them out of that. Most people in this environment, for them to give up a 3% interest rate or 2 point whatever percent interest rate to go into the now a 6% interest rate, which is literally more than double what they are currently having, they're only going to do that if they need to, not want to.
Yeah.
It's not a want anymore. the pain of them having to make the move has to be less than the pain of them staying where they're at.
Yeah,
Unless that happens, they're not going to move. You can't force anybody to. And so, the cases like a job transfer, they needed more space because they had another kid, them getting divorced and because they're going to have to part ways, whatever the reason, there has to be an actual life event that makes it to where it is no longer viable of an option to stay where they're at. And those
definitely.
people are going to be making moves.
And you
And
find that by sitting with them and listening.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Uh,
But
to
our
me,
job
that's what
isn't
that's
to find those people and try to persuade them. Our job is to find the people that have to
yes.
or like can, right? Because they want to.
And those are the people like we don't even want to chase them. We want to attract them. That's why we do so many videos, is because what we're trying to do is put out videos that meet what the kind of people we want so that they go, oh, that's who we want to call because our situation matches that.
Tell me more about that. What does that mean? How are you
Well,
doing videos to attract the
yeah,
right?
so like we are doing, we did a series on downsizing. How do you downsize or right size? Because we know that's a huge demographic of older people that want to give up their big house and go to something smaller, one level, no stairs. That's one. Well, so new construction is another one. A lot of first-time home buyers do want new construction. So we talk about the differences between new construction and resale. We got move up buyers is not currently in my video playlist because we don't see those right now. We don't see people just moving for the sake of a bigger house. So we have very clear focus on who is actually going to buy and what do they care about. So we're tailoring most of our videos to them because if I was doing something about, are you tired of your house and you're ready for a bigger house? There's nobody like that currently.
You know what I love about that, Jenny, is that being intentional to acknowledge that most of the time the downsizing buyer may not have a mortgage. And
Right,
or that is not even in their consideration of thought, right?
right.
Or if they have a small mortgage now, the whole point of downsizing is that they can get rid of that mortgage.
So they
So,
don't care what the interest rates are because they're going to be paying cash.
right, right. I love
Uh,
that.
yeah. All right. So any more questions? So Lauren that works with me, she did put y'all a little comment in there that says for notes from Jenny for today's class. If you just click on that, you can get all the notes that we had. There was a couple of scripts we included in that, a couple of text messages we like to use, and pretty much what I said today, but with no Southern drawl.
Uh, don't worry, us in the West Coast like the Southern draw. One thing I think it's important for us to kind of take away from this, if we will, maybe we need to do that more often, is okay, so what do we take away from today's call? Right.
Yes.
One of the things that I, aside from the notes here, can take away is that I need to be a little bit more intentional when I'm meeting with my clients and being more direct and specific with them. Like
Mhm.
we got to cut the maybe kind of should have, the wishy-washy worded, the words that we use, we got to eliminate them from our vocabulary. It has to be very, very clear. And the way we can get clear is by having data drive our clarity. And then
Yeah.
number two is, I love what you said several times where you got to get on top of that fence with them and sit there with them for a minute and really dissect who they are, what their needs are. And once you understand that and they understand that you understand it, they're not going to trust you.
Yeah, they
But
will.
you get there, you sit down, you hear them, you really truly value why they're making a move, and then you can speak to that, absolutely is a game changer. And then lastly, I think it's important for us to be able to know who the buyers are in today's market and to speak to them instead of chasing, some elusive potential opportunity. You got to attract the right buyers that are currently transacting to come to you. And one of the ways in which you can do that, one of the ways I should be doing that is through video, is to be able to speak to the right audience and give them the right message and be clear. And if you so do that, then you're going to naturally attract those people.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I invite all of you guys to do that. I invite you guys to step up your games, to step up the service that you offer to your clients and truly be that resource for them so that you can give them truly a person that's, has their interest at heart and walk them through that process.
Definitely.
Jenny,
And thank
thank you
y'all
so
guys
much.
for letting me be on today. It was nice to see so many nice faces and everything. So
You bet. Thank you so much for taking the time to prepare and share your wisdom with us. If you guys have any other questions or would like to, have some more input on, future master classes, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Other than that, have an amazing Thursday and have a great weekend, you guys.
bye y'all.